Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead and get started since it looks like from the screen we have quorum. We'll start with call to order and roll call. Cindy, would you do the honors, please?
Stryker,
Here.
Leo. Leo. He's on mute. I'll come back to him. Garnet.
Here.
Davenport.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay. Davenport, not here. Pinozo, not here. And Patterson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
I didn't hear you call me, Cindy. Canarsa.
Canarsa. I called you and I checked you up as here, but Canarsa?
Did you
Wonderful.
call by a different name? I didn't hear my name. I'm
I
here.
maybe just skipped over it because I was going back to Nico.
So thanks everyone for joining the December 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Historic District Commission. We'll go next to any agenda changes or additions, deletions, anything else? Yes, Cindy.
You will see that item number 4, which really should be number 3, approval of the meeting schedule. We'll do that in January. We're supposed to do it at the first meeting in the new year.
Okay.
And Garnet informed me that the minutes were from September and our last meeting was actually in October. Apparently I didn't write those minutes yet. So I see we have Davenport back. I'll check you in as attending.
Great.
So I'll bring the October minutes to the next meeting.
Okay, so we've already approved the September minutes that were included in our packet. So we
Yeah.
will skip over the meeting schedule and skip over approval of the minutes and
Yep.
move to public comment. Is there any public comment today? No? Okay. We'll move to unfinished business, the election of officers. So we just need nominations for chair and vice chair, correct, Cindy?
Correct.
Okay, does anyone have a nomination for chair?
Sure, I'll nominate Tim Straker. Sorry, Nico.
That's okay. That's who I was going to say, so I'll second that.
There you go.
All right, are there any other nominations? Y'all don't speak at once now, come on.
Doing such a good job.
All right, I don't know, Garnet, maybe you can guide me a little bit. I don't know the proper Robert's rules on this. Do we vote on that?
First.
Do we vote
Yes.
on one?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right.
Appreciate you doing
All in-
it.
Yeah, I guess, are you interested in being chair again?
Yeah.
I'll have a conversation with myself, right?
Yeah,
I'm happy to continue if you guys would like me to continue.
I think
Okay.
you're doing a great job, Tim, as always.
Well, thank you. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 We have to do a roll call. Sorry,
Patterson?
on Zoom you have to do roll calls.
Okay, Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes,
Leo,
Yes.
Garnet,
Yes.
Canarsa.
Yes.
Okay. All right, motion passes. Next, I'd like to entertain nominations for vice chair, who I believe is Nico currently.
I'll nominate Nico as vice chair again.
I'll second.
I'll second.
I was going to nominate Jen.
Awesome, quick on the draw, I love that. Is there any discussion? And Nico, are you interested in continuing that role?
I would continue, sure, of course.
Okay, wonderful. A motion and a second discussion. All in favor signify by saying yes. I'll do roll call. Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes,
Straker, yes. Canarsa,
Yes.
Garnet,
Yes.
and Leo.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody?
I don't think so. Motion
Okay.
carries. I don't,
Carrie,
I didn't
thank you.
check off Garnet. Louis, did you vote yes in the affirmative on that?
I did.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
I couldn't
Excuse
check
me.
as fast as you were going.
Saying last names for everybody but Garnet, Tim.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's
that was
got
weird.
such
I
a
don't know why I
sweet
did
first
that.
name.
It was like wherever my eye lands on the Zoom screen.
Yeah.
I have Zoom fatigue. Awesome. So we will move on from that and we'll go to new business. First application is 890 Holland Street, the addition of windows, doors, and siding. Do we have an applicant here?
We do.
Move my screen down a little bit. Is that Patricia or Lynn?
I believe, Tim, that Patricia
Patricia.
is the property owner and Lynn is the contractor. This house is considered non-contributing. It was built in 1997. It currently has vinyl siding. I'm not convinced what kind of windows it has, but I'm sure the applicant would be able to help us out with that. Maybe Mr. Dickerson, who is the contractor.
Wonderful. Welcome to both of you. Any other details you'd like to add to the application as we start to talk about it?
Aaron, can you unmute him?
Sorry, who do you need unmuted?
Mr. Dickerson.
Sorry.
Yeah, Patricia and Lynn are both muted.
Well, I can hit unmute. It doesn't always work.
It worked
Okay.
on that one.
There you go, Mr.
There's
Dickerson.
just a
Can
long
you,
delay.
he may not be able to hear us. Patricia, can you hear us? Do you have anything to add to the application? She may not be able to hear us either.
Yes, I can hear you, and
Okay.
yes. I have nothing to add. I think Lynn was going to lead this, and I'm not sure why he may not be able to hear.
Okay.
I think
Well,
pretty specific. If there's any specific other questions that I can answer, I would appreciate it. I would be glad to help.
I think your application was pretty complete. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to amplify anything you might want to. So no problem. I think Lynn's having probably a hard time hearing us.
Yeah.
Okay. I would just say that the property's been in my family for my husband's family since 1945, and this is the second structure that's been on it. And we're just concerned about some issues with various things and want to make improvements there. So it'll be a great place for my family continuing for the next 100 years.
Yeah, terrific. That's great. So I guess I'll kick off a roundtable around the Zoom room in case anyone has any questions, clarifying questions about the application, but I think it was probably pretty complete and straightforward. John, we'll start with you. Any questions or clarifications? On Canarsa?
Yeah, it's non-conforming, right? So,
Non-contributing.
Contribute, right?
yeah, not contributing. No, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, Nico, any questions?
No, I
or-
thought it was a very thorough application. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Jennifer, any comments or questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, Garnet, comments, questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
And Keith, comments or questions?
No questions, no comments.
Okay, and I don't really have any either. I would say it's obviously on the back side of the house, which is in addition to being non-contributing, it's on the back side, not the street facing side. And that doesn't really change the overall appearance even from the angle that's on the screen. So I don't have any questions or comments either. Do I have a motion for this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Nico, make a
Uh,
motion to,
I make a motion to approve the proposed addition to the lower level with a deck on top replace the windows with Pella windows, replace the doors with Therma True windows, and siding and roof with CertainTeed products as presented without any conditions.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Davenport.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying yes. I'll do a roll call. Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Canarsa,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Straker is a yes. All right, motion carries. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your work too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next application, I guess, is probably not really an application, right, Cindy? It's we have Wicks Park gazebo to talk about, or do we have an application?
We do not have an application. What I'm asking you to consider either tonight or at our next meeting is whether or not we find that structure is contributing or non-contributing. Typically, structures are contributing if they're over 50 years old. This gazebo was built in 1976, making it 44 years old. However, it does have some other history associated with it, and whether or not you think that's adequate history to make it contributing or not contributing. You do not have to take action tonight on this. You may or you may not. If you want to think about it and study it and go look at it, it's in very, very poor condition. Treated lumber
Can I-
doesn't usually last 44 years, but it's starting to fall apart.
I would love to ask a few questions and add a little context to this because since we don't have an application, I don't think we can even determine if it's contributing or non-contributing tonight. I don't know that that would matter. It would have to be done in context of an application, but just to sort of ground ourselves, it's a non-contributing structure, and as such, it does not need a certificate of appropriateness to be demolished.
Correct.
If we first determine that it is a contributing structure, we could still approve demolition, or we could deny demolition, either way. If we deny demolition based on it being a contributing structure or moving the status, I think we would need to have a lot of dialogue in that vote to change it to contributing on reasons why. And I think that's where I kind of looked a little bit for some sort of analogous kinds of decisions, and I didn't look super hard, so I didn't find any in particular. But I think in the course of our meetings, I can only think of one conversation where we talked about the history of a property and its importance of its being contributing. And history almost had as much of a role in it as the structures itself, and that would be the cottages on Lake Street. There was some debate whether or not they had been altered so much that they were non-contributing. We left them contributing, but I remember the dialogue, and I'm being very general. There was some sort of equity given to the history of roadside cottages and the importance of those in our community and to our decision around that. It's not the same, so I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that if you've read this letter that accompanies our packet, at one point, there was a group of people that banded together and made a contribution towards something. This was pre-historic district, I believe, when they did it. But there is a question about, like, how do you honor that in the course of history? So that's my, I guess, my preamble on that. And then a question, maybe Garnet, for you. Does the city have a donation policy? So have you looked at is there any sort of covenant with this structure that we should be aware of in terms of our decision to make it contributing or not when that time comes?
I do not know the answer to that question, but I can find it out. Do you know, Cindy? I don't think there is.
I don't think, I'm pretty sure there's no covenant. And I
Yeah.
don't think there is a strict donation policy that was in effect at that time. I
Yeah,
think the
not aware.
donation policy didn't come in effect till about 3 or 4 years ago.
What is
So-
that? Do we know
Yeah,
what
so
that?
there is a donation policy then, so
There
would
is
the
a
new,
donation policy for park benches and things like the sculpture at Coughlin Park. In order to not only honor that, but to be able to maintain that into the future. The Rose Garden is a considerable expense, and that was a donation, and the city spends quite a bit of money each year on maintaining that. And I think they spent about $5,000 on repainting the sculpture in Coughlin Park. And the reason for that donation policy was to provide for some uniformity in benches and to kind of think about those maintenance costs into the future after a donation.
so I think that's totally fair. I'm glad the city has that policy for those sorts of things from a maintenance standpoint. I'm sort of interested in it from a donation and longevity standpoint. Like, what's the time horizon on your donation? Is it all bets are off after 20 years, after 25 years, after 50 years? So
No.
this new pavilion that's being donated, if any of us on the screen want to donate another couple $100,000 to do something bigger and better, I would feel like that would dishonor the donor who did this. And so if you follow my logic, I'm just curious about that for this.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how many folks are around. I called Peg Sanford today just to ask her for a little more color on the background of the group that came together to donate and build this. And it sounds like there's only a few folks around, but clearly the Garden Club is still there, who did some donation and work on it. So I don't know if those conversations have been had. For me, ultimately, the decision to move to something different is not ours. So I'm really clear on that. But I do think sort of the gesture of history making needs to be considered since we're in the district. And I'd feel bad for Jim Selman, who's donating this, if there weren't a similar policy that we would apply to this and just
Mhm.
sort of without a lot of care approve its demolition. Does anyone have thoughts? Either, I mean, same, opposing, different? Jennifer?
Is it in our purview to make a determination whether it's contributing or non-contributing outside of an application?
Not outside of an application. So that goes
So
back
then
to our,
there is no application.
right.
I mean, is
So
there
once-
anything in the ordinance that says that, I don't know, Cindy, maybe you know, or Garnett?
Yeah, there is, we've renamed some other structures without an application because it came to my attention that they were either new or they were old and they weren't properly assigned a designation, in my opinion, and I brought them to you just to confirm or to refute their designation, whichever that was. I'm trying to think which ones
Oh,
they
you
were.
know what? Yeah, I think we, houses that have aged in, so maybe Bill Galligan's house that
Yep,
came up last year, 2
exactly.
years ago.
Yep,
Yeah,
and
Is
they
that your
didn't have an
que-
application.
right. I'm just wondering, is that in the ordinance or is that just, I don't know.
It's not in the ordinance, and it's totally up to you to make a decision one way or another, whether we have an application or not.
Well,
Um,
there should be something in the ordinance. Maybe that needs to be,
It's
addressed.
really in the definition of contributing and non-contributing is where you would find how they should be designated.
Right.
In the contributing definition, it says most are over 50 years old, but doesn't have to be over 50 years old. So
I
it's totally up to you.
So
Oh.
if I may ask a couple questions, I mean, this is, you know, this, I've written down a couple questions, but so in terms of not even having an application, if you think about it, that the current band shell there is a city property. And so the city would be doing the application to
Yeah.
basically ask if it's conforming or non-conforming for the historical commission to decide whether it is or is not, right?
contributing, non-contributing. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And
That's exactly
yeah.
what I was going to say, Garnet. I was going to say we need to treat this like any other house
Mhm.
application, where
Right.
the city is the applicant and they're asking, they're filling out an application for us. The only difference is I don't think the city will apply most likely to demolish it because that's the
Right.
homeowner and that's what the city will ask to do.
Mhm.
Once that application comes in, and I think this is what I thought you were asking too, Jennifer, as just like any other application, we first go, wait, do we all agree that this is a non-contributing structure? Let's have that dialogue first. If we want to vote on that and vote it one way or the other, we do that, then we hear the application as submitted.
So
So I
Cindy,
don't
let me,
think there's for
yeah,
us
I'm
to
s-
do tonight, but I think
yeah.
it's a good dialogue.
So Cindy, another question for you. We do as historic committee also then have to review the design, right? And approve the design.
For the new structure,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay. So is that something that you'd anticipate both of these occurring next month? What are we? December. So January?
It's possible that the new structure could be designed by next month. John
Yeah.
Moxie is setting up a kickoff meeting for a design review committee.
Yeah.
We're asked to have 2 people from the Historic Commission be on that committee, as well as 3 council people.
Mhm.
The council is going to make the final decision on the design, but I think it's well worth our effort to have some historic representation on the design review committee.
Mhm.
But let me clarify what you just said. Yes, they will make the final decision on the design that they will submit,
Mhm.
but that's in the application that we then approve because it's in
Yes.
the historic district.
That's correct. But they're going to, I should say it differently.
Yeah.
They want input from the Historic District Commission during the design review process to avoid any surprises. I mean, if I brought you an application on this finalized design for a new band shell without you having any opportunity to give input before it was brought forward to you, I think that would be kind of a cold shoulder to the Historic District Commission and very insensitive. So John Moxie, the city engineer who's going to be working on the design with their landscape designer and architect, want Historic District to be involved on the planning end. No, they don't want to wait till after the plan is done and then say,
Right.
okay, Historic District, what did you think you wanted? Well, too late now.
Well, and I'm sure, I know I'm being redundant in saying this, but I'm sure you've guided them towards our guidelines too, right?
Yes.
So even before a committee is formed to react to a design, I would hope that they've taken a deep dive on what our new construction guidelines are.
Yes.
Yeah. John's very good at that. He's been very aware. So, you know, I think more from forming this kind of small group, if you will, is to make sure that the Historic District Commission has a voice and a say in this and is aware. As Cindy's saying, the last thing we want to do is, as a city, come back to this commission and say, okay, here it is. You know, so moving forward, we see that as the best way to go forward. So
Terrific.
Mhm.
Okay, so if I recap our next steps on this, there will be an application developed with a design that accompanies it. And at the beginning of that application, we'll have dialogue on if it's contributing or non-contributing. We'll make that decision for the request for demolition, if there is one. And we'll go from there. Do we want to talk about the two folks to be appointed to that that committee?
Can I
anyone-
pick up 1 second before we do that? I have to clarify, Tim, why are we separating the question of whether it's contributing or not with the design? Why are we doing that at the same time? It seems like we could have that discussion first.
There has, in my mind, so tell me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, there has to be an application. So again, if this were a homeowner, you would come with an application and say, I want to demolish my house and here's what I want to build. Now we may table the approval of the build and first focus on the demolition. But I think correct me if I'm wrong, but they've usually been considered together.
So
These
can I
are-
ask
I would-
Sorry.
can I ask a quick question? So actually, we're not replacing at the same location, Tim. The proposal is to build the new band shell up towards the northwest corner of the park rather than in that location. So should we really be looking at this as two different things? One is a demo or whether it's contributing or conforming or whatever, and the other one is a whole new build.
I agree. I think they're two separate issues, two separate applications.
They're two definitely separate applications. They're definitely two separate applications,
Okay.
and they're not going to occur simultaneously.
Got it.
The band shell, the new band shell will probably be first. But in the meantime, I just wanted you to start thinking about whether or not this bandstand, how are we going to handle it? And it gives you some time to formulate your ideas and to, if you want to have a tour of the gazebo. It has a lot of problems, and not first, but is the accessibility. It's not handicap accessible, and if once you put a certain amount of money into it, you have to make it accessible. And a ramp for that gazebo is going to be pretty big and may or may not be appropriate, or it has to be
But-
closed off.
But I think that makes sense to me. So you can maintain it without making it accessible, right?
You can maintain it to a certain degree, a certain money amount, which is half the value of the building, which when you start looking at the value of the structure and how much money you have to put in to maintain it, you get to 50% pretty fast, especially if you're gonna.
Okay.
I
So,
want to take a look at condition too while we have a chance.
Okay, so let me just ask one last clarifying question to what the line you guys are going down with separate applications. The reason I thought it was the same is because it's one piece of property and there's a structure on that piece of property. So maybe I'm taking the house analogy too far. But if someone comes to us and says, I want to add another structure to my property, or I guess, and they already have a house and a garage there, like that feels weird to me. So that's why I thought it would be one. I'm not thinking about it the right way.
If you had a contributing structure that was a house and you wanted to add a new garage, the garage would be considered as a separate application if you were going to keep your house. And at this time, the idea is to keep the gazebo until such a time the city decides that they don't want the gazebo.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So,
Jennifer, do you have a question
yeah.
too?
It was basically that.
yeah,
Okay.
so this is Keith. I have one other question. So if you put the restroom into this mix, how does that work out in this play?
That restroom is conceptually located on box A, and the existing restroom would be demolished. The existing restroom, I think it was built in the 60s as a restaurant, and then it was converted to a storage building, and then it was converted to a restroom much later. It is definitely flooded and in the floodplain. So that restroom, the things that make it contributing are kind of the painting. It's just a concrete block building.
Right, so we'll go through the same process from the HDC perspective on that structure, is that correct?
Correct. You go through the process on the restroom to demolish the existing, and to construct a new one would be new construction in location A.
Okay, thanks.
I'm having, now that you put this up on the screen, it's helpful, but I'm still having a hard time, I guess, with the two applications again, because now this is like a master plan. And so I'm making, as a commissioner, I'm making a decision or recommendation on a new structure in context for two other structures on the property. And with that decision, I'm saying I like it or I don't like it, or it meets guidelines or it doesn't, based on its relationship to the other two structures on that property. And then somebody's going to say, oh no, but we want to tear those down. And then it sort of changes my perspective potentially on the one we are asking for. That's why I felt like they were connected.
Yeah, so Tim, Garn here. So in our conversations on city council, we are, even though this piece of property, if you will, Wicks Park is one entity, we are taking this really in three parts. The creation of the new gazebo per the donation from Selman and Bayless. That's one. The second is the demo or removal of the old band shell. The third is the demo or movement or removal of the bathroom. We have chosen not to tackle that all together as one big project for a number of reasons. So that's where we're at. And it's really three separate things that are going on that are going to happen. It's not happening all at once.
I'm totally with you on that. I guess maybe I'm overthinking it, but if I play that out again, we approve the band shell and we decide that the pavilion is contributing and it needs to stay, does that change the dialogue on the appropriateness or the placement of the application that came first?
I think it does. There's a relationship. So that's why it seems like we need to address the current pavilion first and decide if it is contributing or not. Is it appropriate to take a pulse on that with the group tonight or not?
I think the city needs to make an application, but I don't, I see exactly what you're saying, Tim, and John, that maybe Garnett, the city council needs to submit an application about the pavilion first, or next month, whatever the position is, and then we can take a decision on that. Because you're right, when you look at the whole property, if you don't take a decision on the pavilion and you're going to begin by looking at the new structure, then you're going to have to take into consideration the pavilion that's still sitting there, which it's going to impact that decision. You can't, if you know it, there's a demolition permit and it's going to be demolished, then you don't have to think about that when you're thinking about the new structure.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying, and I understand that the city council, from what Garnett is saying, is it's the new structure, the gazebo, or the band, the gazebo, and then the restrooms. But is it possible that maybe the city council could look at talking about the gazebo, it's not a big, I mean, it's the design of the new band shell is a much larger project. It's probably gonna take a lot longer. That maybe the city council could address the demolition permit for the gazebo. In the meantime,
Well,
just
oh,
gonna be
yeah, so we are under obligation through this gift from Jim and David. We're under a time obligation, actually. This project is to be finished by the summer. And because it's been delayed up to this point, now we are on a mission to get that done by the summer. So there's a time crunch along with that.
Sure.
Hey, Garnet,
Yeah, go on ahead, Nico.
so let me ask you this. So you're planning on doing the project in different phases. So the first
Yeah.
phase would be the band shell, and then the second phase would be the restrooms. And they're
Yeah,
the
it's either,
are the
can't-
restrooms supposed to be done by summer as well?
no, just the new band shell, just the new gazebo. Just the new
Okay.
gazebo.
So again, if I put it in,
one more thought. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously the band shell is the focus, yeah, as it should be. But the demolition permit if that's what the council decides for the gazebo should be pretty straightforward. Probably do both at the same time.
It's a cost perspective. It's a money issue.
no, but just getting approval for it, I think is all
Yeah,
you're saying.
The
You don't have,
approval, because
Yeah, I agree.
it's not about doing the work, maybe even, it's just about getting it out of the way so we can look at the new band shell and without the gazebo being in the picture.
I think that's right, Jennifer, because again, if we use a house analogy, if somebody has an application, but say, I'm going to come back to you for the second part of that later when I can afford to do it. We're going to be like, yeah, but what if you sell the house, or what if you just run out of funds and decide not to do it? You've altered that property. Like we need to sort of make a recommendation or a vote on the entirety of the picture.
It doesn't have to be done. It's got I think it's a year on the authorization. So it's not about, if it's a funding issue, which I understand, then it doesn't have to be done work has to start within 1 year, I believe.
Cindy, what makes the most sense to you? I want you to pop in here.
I do understand what Tim and Jennifer are saying. It would not be harmful to request approval for the demolition of the gazebo and not do it for a whole year. And you're also able to get a 1-year extension on that if needed.
Okay.
But that does make sense. It does kind of track better. I was looking at them as saying, this is a master plan, and this is going to be the new band shell, and the gazebo is going to eventually be gone, but we don't know exactly when. It does kind of make sense to get the approval for that, so it takes it out of the equation when you're looking at the design of the band shell.
So
I think
what I would recommend the city do is to sort of put a pin in that, is that application for January, if that's when it can be, is almost like an application to share a conceptual review of the project. And it can be 5 different things, sort of like what you were popping up, like this is the line of what we're thinking of, what we would like to build and the bids that we're getting. And our plan is to first demolish the pavilion. That will happen at some time in the future once one of these things land in terms of its final design that the commission approves. That way we're making a contextual decision.
Are you saying that it should be one? I'm not
Yeah.
sure I understand. Is it one application?
Yeah, I think it's like we've done before. It's one application with 2 parts.
With the conceptual plan of 5
I think I think it's up to it would be up to the applicant. I think if I were the applicant, I would want to come to the commission and say, here's the big idea of what we're trying to accomplish in Wicks Park. And it's first this, and it's probably moving this there. And then ultimately it's getting rid of the gazebo. And here's what we're thinking. This is our conceptual review of what our master plan is, but part 8 of that is demolishing this non-contributing structure. And then normally we would say, well, wait a minute, let's determine if this is contributing or non-contributing. And we would make a vote on that. If part B of that, if there were like firm designs that we could vote on, we would normally. If there's not, we would table that until the applicant comes back at the next meeting with a firm set of designs. I think that's the way we've done it in the past, and it feels right, but push back if it doesn't feel right.
I still think it's 2 applications, and then the gazebo needs to be, you're not gonna, I mean, obviously this band shell is gonna be built. It needs to be designed, and that needs to get approved, and there's gonna be a committee, that's great. But when you're looking at those designs, if you still have this gazebo, in the same park, that has to be taken into consideration. That's the only reason I'm saying that I think it needs to be, that needs to be done first.
Yeah, you're right. I'm with you.
I mean, there's probably going to be some political blowback because, there's, sorry, but, it's not, there are certain people that obviously it's an older building. It's not contributing necessarily, but I think
There are some people that have affection for the gazebo.
I guess that's political blowback for me. So, yeah.
Mhm.
That's for the elected folks to deal with. So it'll fall on council. I mean, that's why we do this. We take shoulders.
I'm not trying to complicate it. I just want to make sure that we're following the right process and we're looking at it. We're not making it political, and we're looking at it through the eyes of a normal applicant. So I think we had good conversation about that. If I were to give feedback as a commissioner to the application or the applicant, which is the city, I would say, gosh, please come with your application having thought about the role this structure plays in the city. Don't automatically come with your application knowing that this is currently designated as a non-contributing structure and thinking you don't need a COA to demolish it. Instead, come as a steward saying, this thing means something to people, and you've considered this, and this, but we would still, for the greater good, like to blah, blah, blah. Like I'm kind of looking for that. I think that's a better political backstory too, of considering opinions about this thing versus just black and white saying it's a non-contributing structure and it can be torn down. And it's in terrible shape.
I think that's part of the reason that John Moxie wants to have this kickoff meeting to talk about all these procedures and policies and what processes are going to take place. The first meeting will be a kickoff meeting. It's not going to be a final decision-making meeting, but just to get feedback from everybody before they get too far into the designing of it, that they can't back off or change something. And I think that's important to just get our 2 people appointed for the design committee and go to the kickoff meeting, talk about all these things with the stakeholders and the designer, and see if we can't come up with what exactly the procedure is going to be.
So we need 2 people.
We need 2 people. I think Tim has volunteered already, and we need 1 more victim.
I'm happy to, but I'm also happy to give my seat to someone who feels passionate about it if there's two other folks.
Wait, who was the first volunteer? Victim?
Victim number one is Tim.
All right.
But like I said, I'm happy to give my seat to two other people. So anyone
How
else
often-
interested?
How often does this ad hoc committee meet, Cindy?
I think they'll probably meet 2 or 3 times and then they'll be done.
I'll do it if you want me to.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's good group.
Anyone else feel strongly? I'm happy to step back. Okay. Jen, it's you and me.
And I
Team-
will be in touch
team
shortly
production.
about when those meetings are.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good discussion.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to administrative approvals and updates. I know I have
We have-
one thing to add on this one. Go ahead, Cindy.
We have just the two, the shed at 607 Butler and some minor adjustments to the house, the main house at 645 Lake at Old Pike. There were some building code issues that the property owner ran into with proximity to property line and window openings.
So Cindy asked me about this one. I just want to make sure this is okay with you guys, what I said. So this is the house at the Old Pike Cottages that Sean is building. Every elevation is exactly the same. The only difference is on the river side or the lake side of the house. There are kind of foundation openings and window openings, kind of like under a deck in the concrete foundation. So there were like 2 windows installed where otherwise that was at grade. So it wasn't anything that was even noticeable. Nothing changed from the street or the neighbor side or the parking lot side. So I thought that was okay to administratively approve, but normally I know we wouldn't do that with something like windows. So I wanted to make sure that was okay with you guys.
Did you say they're under a deck?
Am I confusing the applications? I'm pretty sure they're like under a deck.
Yeah, they're under a deck.
Yeah. It's not a walkout. I do know that.
No,
But that was the grade change based on them needing to move the property or move the structure a little bit from the property line based on code issues. Anything on those two? Okay.
I had one question on one other graphic that I noticed.
Yeah.
If you're done there, Tim. This is Keith. Was there any application required for the graphic that's next to the Baldy's entrance on the Kalamazoo Lake there, or was that just they could do whatever?
Oh, the mural?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we did not. No, we did not have that for review. It was considered to be artwork.
Okay. So is that the criteria?
More or less.
Yeah. I think it's Cindy and I did
Garish?
talk about one. Well, given that it's paint, it can be corrected without changing the structure. So
Right.
We-
And it's a non-contributing structure.
Okay. We don't have any control over that. Is that correct?
We don't have any control over paint.
Okay. Thanks.
We don't have any control over paint and we don't have any control over, well, it's a non-contributing structure, so I mean,
Okay.
I'm not sure what we would control.
Just checking.
I would be giddy if they put a coat of green paint on that whole thing outside of that mural.
And we don't have any control over non-commercial speech is the other thing. So if it's non-commercial speech,
Okay.
we
Thank
can't,
you.
opinion.
Is there any other communication or public comment or commission comment? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Garn, second.
Second.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning signify by saying yes. Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Narsa,
Yes.
Straker, yes. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome holiday. I wish
All
we
right.
could get together to
Awesome,
cheer
guys.
some eggnog, but
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah. That's
I'll
exactly
stop
right.
by.
Thanks,
Bye, y'all.
everyone.
All right, be well,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Take care.